Unacademy. Let's crack it.
So, hi everyone, welcome to Unacademy. मेरा नाम निधि है. I'm an educator with Unacademy. और आज हमारे साथ हैं एक और सक्सेसफुल कैंडिडेट इन यूपीएससी 2022 जिनका सिलेक्शन हुआ है रैंक 67, आनंद मल्होत्रा. वेलकम आनंद, कैसे हैं आप?
Thank you, ma'am. I'm feeling good, and thank you for having me.
You must be very much excited about the rank and you got through UPSC 2022.
Indeed,
तो
ma'am.
फीलिंग सिंक इन हो गई है?
It has. With time, it has, and equally, I think in equal measure, I'm also fairly relieved कि फिर से prelims नहीं लिखना पड़ेगा. I'm out of that cycle, so it's both. I'm overjoyed as well as relieved at the same time.
ओके ग्रेट. तो मतलब आपको रिलीफ इस बात का है कि दोबारा प्रीलिम्स मैं ये अज्यूम कर रही हूँ कि आपने प्रीलिम्स की तैयारी फिर से शुरू कर दी थी बिफोर यू गॉट योर रिजल्ट आफ्टर योर इंटरव्यू.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, there was a very short period of preparation because my interview was almost towards the end of the session. So
Alright.
there was a short interval, but I was preparing for prelims. Should I not be successful at that?
ओके. सो आनंद, सबसे पहले विच अटेम्प्ट वाज इट? कौन से अटेम्प्ट में क्लियर किया आपने?
Ma'am, so this was my second attempt. I had given an attempt earlier also in 2015, but I couldn't clear my prelims at that time.
2015 में अटेम्प्ट किया, उसके बाद 2000 आपने 21 सॉरी नॉट 22, 2021 आपने अटेम्प्ट किया. सो 15 से 21 का गैप, ऑलमोस्ट 6 इयर्स का गैप, आई विल से 5 इयर्स का गैप है ना. उस 5 साल में व्हाट डिड यू डू? मतलब 5 साल का गैप आपने क्यों दिया अपनी प्रिपरेशन को?
Ma'am, so I was not prepared to quit my job. I had given that attempt alongside my job, and I realized that UPSC preparation will take full-time devotion at least at my end. I would not be able to do justice either to my job either or to the preparation. And I was also not quite prepared to leave the job because I felt that UPSC was quite unpredictable. It felt good to have a safety net in the sense that it's better to have a backup option, build a safety net, and do equally exciting work. So I took a plunge into startups. I wanted work diversity, and I took a plunge into startups. And for 5 years, I was working across various startups in e-commerce space.
All right. So, what is your educational background, Anand? If you can just tell us.
Sure, ma'am. Ma'am, so I'm a civil engineer. I graduated from Punjab Engineering College in 2012. Immediately after that, I did my MBA from IAS in sales and marketing.
All right. So उसके बाद आपने अटेम्प्ट किया 2015 में with your college itself you attempted and then you thought of having a plan B, I would call it, जो हमारे मतलब यूपीएससी की भाषा में plan B बोलते हैं.
Yes, ma'am. Alongside my work, that was my first job alongside which I had given my first attempt. And while
2015.
working, I had yes, ma'am. So while working, I had given that attempt.
All right. So generally as aspirant, I've rarely have heard people telling me that plan B was there. What was your take on plan B that ways? And why at all after 5 years of your working in your field where you are telling कि आप बहुत exciting job कर रहे थे, मतलब आपका काम बहुत अच्छा था and you were quite satisfied with the work that you were doing. What motivated you to come back to UPSC again and prepare and then this time you got through?
Ma'am, so in 2015 when I wrote my attempt, I think just a month or maybe less than that, the rules of the game changed and CSAT became an optional. The score became optional. So
Yeah.
I recognized that UPSC by nature is quite unpredictable, and it did dawn on me that maybe the universe was trying to tell me that okay, this is a signal, and this is not the route for you somehow. So I did the next best thing, which was that okay, let me take a plunge into something wherein I can be a part of different projects. I can have a lot of cross-functional learning, and wherein I can directly experience the impact that I'm creating. And at that time, if you remember, 2015-16 were very ripe for getting into e-commerce startups. The space was building up.
That was actually the beginning of, I would say, started in Startup India and Make in India and all those new things have come up. Yes.
True. So at that time, I took a plunge into a small startup called Travel Triangle within the tourism space, and I did quite well. I would say that my experience within these startups actually made me more enterprising, and it made me feel that I really thrive in those environments where there is a lot of diversity of work, there is a very steep learning curve, and where the sense of impact is also high. That is why in 2021 I was more enterprising, and I felt that I can further accentuate this learning as well as the sense of that impact by becoming a civil servant.
Okay, so basically you are trying to tell me that आपके काम ने आपको और ज्यादा motivate किया या फिर आपको ज्यादा prepare किया for UPSC this time and then this attempt you got through. Okay, let's
Yes,
say अच्छा because 2015 you gave an attempt and but उसमें आपने ज्यादा पढ़ाई नहीं की थी, it was just आपने दे दिया था attempt and then you decided again 2021 वाला attempt. What was your strategy to begin with the preparation? How did you begin the preparation? मतलब was it only syllabus PYQs thing or what was it? What motivated you again?
ma'am. So I had quit my job in October 2020, end of October 2020,
Which you
and
were doing very good at, right?
yes, ma'am. I was at Cast 24 at that time, and
Right.
I quit the job and I took a whole-time plunge. So initially, the prelims was slated at in June 2021. Initial starting of June 2021. My
Yes,
initial
but then
strategy was
COVID.
simple. Yeah, so it got postponed eventually. But my initial strategy
Hmm.
was to firstly break down the syllabus. I broke down the syllabus. I figured out what the past year trends was, and then I limited my sources. So I read a lot of previous year toppers, what their strategies was, and I figured that the syllabus can be quite unmanageable and it can be quite infinite if you even include current affairs. So what worked well for me was limiting my sources, given the time constraints I had on my hand, and then revising and re-revising again and again, keeping previous year questions at side by side, so that I know that that feedback loop is there in terms of what I'm doing, is it relevant or not for the examination.
All right. So basically, you were, matlab, the sources were limited. You did not jump from one source to another source. That was one thing that you made sure. Number two, you listened to or looked out for the strategies that toppers were, applying, and then you made a strategy for yourself. That is what we also tell the students or the aspirants that anybody is telling you all their strategy, their experiences. Everybody's strategy is going to be different. You have to, create your own path for this preparation. So, what is that one thing that kept you motivated throughout this journey? Because 5 साल आपने वर्क भी किया, मतलब यू हैड अ वर्क एक्सपीरियंस, गुड वर्क एक्सपीरियंस, जिसके बाद आप कह रहे हैं कि आपको लगता है कि यू वर रेडी फॉर प्रीलिम्स और यूपीएससी, आई वुड से नॉट प्रीलिम्स, एंड देन दिस अटेम्प्ट आई वुड टेक्निकली कॉल इट योर फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट दैट वेज, बिकॉज यहाँ पर आपने पूरा प्रिपरेशन के साथ अटेम्प्ट दिया. द फर्स्ट अटेम्प्ट यू गॉट दिस गुड रैंक, 67 रैंक. सो what was that motivating force behind this entire journey of 1.5 years जहां पे आपने जॉब क्विट करके you started with UPSC? What kept you
Ma'am,
motivated?
so one motivation was the nostalgia of studying back again.
Oh,
There was I had quite an operations heavy role, and getting back to study was very exciting, and also the syllabus was very appealing. It was almost like going back to school. The syllabus is exceedingly dynamic and very interesting as well. You get to learn about history, you get to read geography. So one that interest in that syllabus, the interest in the subject matter was a big motivation, because I felt very engaged and it seemed very interesting to me. Secondly, I was also mindful of the sacrifice I was making. This was a huge jump. I knew the opportunity cost that I was incurring, and I also banked upon my work ex, because they're also, they are very steep learning curves. You have to go through a lot of ups and downs. So I banked that, okay, we persevered through those times, then okay, hopefully I'll be able to persevere through this time as well.
so any idol that you thought of in the beginning, जिसको आपने idolize किया हो कि यार मुझे ये करना है, this is what I want, and this is like this is the person I want to be like. ऐसा कोई इस journey में आपके लिए that one person or one thing that you attach to your goal, basically anything that you attach to your goal?
Ma'am, personally, I wanted to just limit it to myself and improving against what I can do as a person individually. I mean, in terms of my idols, again, from my family, my parents, my sisters are always my idols in terms of what they do, what is their worldview, and how they approach life. But in this instance, I would say that there was an inherent feeling that I wanted to do better than, or I wanted to be a better version of myself. And somewhere that inner motivation was there, that I need to consistently improve. And whenever I would, I'll break my task into milestones. Whenever I would reach a milestone, I would treat myself. I would say that, okay, this is what we've been able to achieve. So I would say that it was a a consistent drive of pushing myself. That okay, every day
So,
I'll be a better version of myself.
so you basically had this self-motivating thing in you. उसी zeal के साथ you continued your preparation, and luckily in the very first, technically second, but I think ideally it should be called as the first attempt. You got through. All right. So prelims we've discussed. You studied the syllabus thoroughly. You looked for the strategy that toppers had made. Then you narrow down your own strategy. You created your own strategy. Syllabus PYQs were one thing that you kept in hand always, limiting your resources. Let's come to mains now. How did you start preparing for mains? Number one. Number two, when did you start preparing for mains?
Ma'am, so I believe that the preparation from mains is concurrent with prelims in a lot of ways, at least for the major subjects. However, given the time constraint at my hand, my strategy was that, okay, I would at least prepare my optional subject, which was sociology, prior to prelims once, so that, I don't have to run from pillar to post in gathering resources for it, because there's a very limited time after mains to prepare for optional. So predominantly prior to mains, I had only prepared my optional. And after I had given my prelims, I had started answer writing. And initially, till the result was declared, I focused on the topics which were not as relevant for prelims, perhaps, but more relevant for mains. For instance, security, society, disaster management, and
Disaster
topics like
management.
world history and ethics. So these were the topics that I prepared in that hiatus till the prelims results were not declared.
All right. So regarding answer writing, as you've already said, that it's concurrent. Matlab, you cannot actually, divide the preparation saying this is a prelims preparation, this is a mains preparation. They're overlapping topics. Yes, of course, there are topics which are new that you told about. Internal security is there, disaster management is there, world history is there. Are few topics which are there in the mains and not in the prelims. Got it. Answer writing. When did you start your answer writing? Was it before you wrote your prelims or after the prelims was done? Then you thought of, decided that now I'm going to write my answers, prepare answer
Uh,
writing or things like that.
Ma'am, I started my answer writing after the prelims results came out. Actually, I
Not
started
before
quite late.
that.
No, ma'am, I
Okay.
started quite late. And retrospectively, if I have to look back, I would say that, at least I could have done one thing I could have improved on is perhaps after a couple of iterations of my syllabus was done, I could have tried writing a few answers. But uh, at that time, given the constraints I had at my hand, I did not start my answer writing until the prelims results came out. But once the results came out, I devotedly wrote 1 hour of answer writing every day, given in that time frame. And then I also wrote a lot of test series so that I'm very well equipped to manage the actual examination setting.
All right. So as you've told कि आप retrospect में जाके अगर आपको कुछ change करना is that you should start answer writing a little early. That is what you're trying to say, right? Not
Perhaps,
not
yes.
after the prelims. That is what I was surprised at कि आपने prelims के बाद बिल्कुल शुरू की, but that's good. It worked for you. That's the best thing that we can say. Now, let's say मैं आपसे एक situation में पूछूं कि what is the ideal time for an aspirant to start answer writing? As in, there are a lot of apprehensions about answer writing. Some say that start writing from the very beginning. Okay, whenever you're studying a subject, what should be the ideal strategy? Is it that you have done the syllabus, number one, of the subject, you have revised the subject once, you made your notes, and then you should start the answer writing, or should it be topic specific? मतलब complete syllabus of that subject or single topic? What would you suggest?
Again, it depends on the person also, whatever works well for the person. I was comfortable in delaying my decision because I had done a lot of editorial work throughout my college education, and I also used to write quite vociferously. In the sense, I used to maintain my journals, I used to write. So I was quite comfortable in postponing that decision. Nevertheless, what I would say is that logically, it would make sense to do a couple of iterations of the entire syllabus and then start answer writing, because answers require a lot of cross-functional inputs from different subjects. It's not that when you are writing an answer for
It
polity
has to be
or more
multidimensional.
specifically
Yes.
society, yeah, you can't simply write over a societal view. There has to be a political, economic, or a social view that has to be enshrined in that answer.
Yeah. All right.
So that only comes with
basically
a
it comes at
multiple.
least
Yeah.
2 times. You must have done your syllabus once, and then only you should start answer writing. You just cannot start answer writing randomly. बस अब मैंने एक बार पढ़ लिया and I should write the answer. All right. Now, next thing that I want to ask you is about the interview. What was your strategy for the interview? You started preparing for the interview in the very beginning itself, because it's the entire process, the journey. Interview cannot be, I think, segregated from the entire journey and said कि ठीक है last का 1 महीना you're doing the interview. What was your take on that?
Ma'am, so when it came to interview, there were two parts to it. One was, of course, in terms of the GS syllabus and the current happenings that were happening. But then there was another part that pertains to your detailed application form, that is the DAP, as well as
Yeah.
what you had done in your graduation. So over and above what I had already studied during prelims and mains, I brushed up on the recent current affairs. Especially, I made newspaper reading much more intense than what it was during prelims and mains, because interviews are much more detailed critical analysis of news, not just the headlines or the mere facts, but it's more about how detailed viewpoints can be formed. So my newspaper reading became more detailed. Additionally, I had to also cover a lot of parts of my DAF as well as from my graduation subject, which was civil engineering and management.
So how did it go? Your interview?
So, ma'am, I had Smita Nagraj ma'am board, and
Okay.
my interview was almost towards the end of the entire process. It was on 20th of May. So, I would say the entire session was quite cordial. I benefited immensely from taking mock interviews across various institutions, and they gave me quite relevant inputs in terms of how to answer or how to approach these interviews. Because unlike the private sector, I think these interviews are very very different, and there is a very different etiquette
Absolutely.
to giving a government interview. So getting to know that etiquette, getting to know how to answer or how much to answer, these were the important inputs. And overall, I felt that the board was extremely cordial. Bulk of my interview went through my graduation subjects and through my DAF, and I thought that it was more conversational. The more conversational it was, the more comfortable I felt, and I think it went well eventually.
Yeah, because the conversation was there, right? It was not that pressure building interview, I would say. You were lucky one there.
Luckily not. Luckily not.
Not the pressure, checking your capabilities to handle the pressure. All right. One thing that, again, the students are very keen to know is regarding the choice of optional subject. Why did you choose sociology as your optional subject? Was it because you had a flair in writing? You were very good and comfortable about writing, you maintained your journals and all those things? That one reason, or the syllabus, or the marks? What appealed you to take sociology as your optional subject?
And so it was two pronged really. At one end, I had come across Yuval Noah Harari's book, The Sapiens, in 2019 while I was still working. And that was the
Okay.
first time, earlier, when we used to study social sciences in maybe perhaps last I studied in class 10th, it used to be quite pedantic and one way didactic, way of teaching. You grasp a lot of
Hmm.
facts, but you don't know what that application is. However, I found
Exactly.
this book to be very application oriented, and it did intrigue my interest to an extent. And secondly, it was from an examination point of view because I felt that I was writing something formal after a while, although I wrote journals, but they were quite informal in nature. And I felt that, there was quite a task. It was quite a task to write formally once again. And I felt that there were very rich cross fertilizations, not only in optionals, but also in GS as well as in essay. So, sociology overall, I found to be extremely interesting subject. I felt that I could cover it within that time and also reap dividends in terms of other examination papers as well.
All right. So basically, what you're trying to tell me is that sociology is one subject which has an overlapping with all the GS papers. It has, of
Yes,
course,
ma'am.
it will benefit you in your essay, it will benefit you in your paper one, paper two, especially. Then ethics ka kuch section hai jahan pe it will help you. And of course,
And
that
also,
flair of writing, though you were writing, yeah.
sorry to interrupt you. Also,
No, I'm sorry. You please.
if I may just reinforce, I think that interest part should be the primary motivation. I could have taken civil engineering and management also, but I realized that the time was not sufficient to do that justice to them, and I would require very, very sustained efforts in maintaining both. So I narrowed down the choice of option also basis the interest because usually it may take a couple of attempts to clear the examination. So the optional should be such that you are able to read it over and over again.
All right, all right. So basically, it was your interest area that you got into for optional one say. How about the current affairs, which is again a very very मतलब, the aspirants are so curious to know कि भाई current affairs कहाँ से पढ़ते हैं सारे toppers और ये कहाँ से cover करते हैं because if you look at the current affairs there are n number of platforms, there are n number of blogs, there are newspapers. What was your strategy to go through the current affairs?
Ma'am,
You
so
made notes
I
or you followed some.
ma'am, so I mostly made digital notes only. because it was easier to manage current affairs with digital notes because things keep changing time and time again. So it's easier to manage those notes.
Yeah.
What I did was, I read newspapers on a daily basis, but at the night I would make notes through websites which collate, the key insights from different sources. So that actually helps you optimize a lot of newspaper reading. You can do with just reading one paper and then optimize any gaps which are there through those websites. And I would also attend 5 to 10 questions on current affairs which are available commonly across platforms. So that way, the learning of the day gets reinforced. So I did this and would revise once a month all the notes that were made. And then eventually, closer to prelims, would revise it much more along with the test papers. But then I was very mindful of limiting my current affairs because, you can actually dive into an infinite pool if you start diving down deep into current affairs.
Absolutely. So one last question, and then we'll wind up the interview, is that because last couple of years we've seen the trend has changed with UPSC. It's shifted more toward the conceptual, static portion. Not exactly static, but at the same time, it's a balance of both static and dynamic. The current affairs are not directly, direct current affairs as such. They are coming from the conventional portions also. How did you manage that thing? What was your strategy? Did you read the current affairs in isolation from your static content, or was it merged together? Okay, this is the verdict that has come from Supreme Court. I'm going to go back to my constitution book and see what content it covers. Was it this or just separate? Both the things.
So initially it was separate because current affairs keep happening on a daily basis and you can't cover all the syllabus in one go. So initially I focused on standard books and I kept my current affairs notes as well. And over time, once I had done a lot of iterations of the standard books, then I was able to collate them much more in a better way, especially during my mains preparation. Because there I was able to join the dots and I was able to collate the judgments into my answers as well. However, initially I would say that it may seem very, tempting to resist reading all the current affairs because we've not read the entire syllabus, we've not covered the entire syllabus. But I would say go with the flow, make short notes of it, read and revise because it will also reinforce learnings within static as well. But once you've done iteration for both, then you can mix and match both, given that I had digital notes.
Great. So before we wind up, the last advice or suggestion that you want to give in to all the aspirants who are preparing for 2023, 24, what should be the ideal mindset? Like you said that you used to treat yourself when you used to achieve some targets. You used to make targets for your preparation. And what should be the, in a very generalized format, what should be the ideal strategy to crack this exam at one go? What can it be?
I would say that a sense of self-realization or self-awareness is extremely important because what works well for one person may not work well for another person. And even from time to time, when I studied in 2015, I was much more comfortable in making written notes. However, this time I was much more comfortable with digital notes. So a sense of self-awareness is extremely important because one person's strategy may differ from another. And for me, that self-awareness was in terms of having a sense of job security. I knew that I had a fallback option. Also in terms of knowing what worked well for me. So delaying gratification, treating myself in terms of, my favorite dessert or food whenever I achieved a milestone. So whatever works well for you, have that self-awareness, and then having that self-awareness, include that self-awareness into your strategy. I think that would be my advice.
Great. So I did not ask you about the test series and the practice questions because I think that you've already discussed in the beginning that you did practice sets also. So on that note, Anand, I would take your leave and I would say yes. To conclude, I'll just say to all the aspirants, all the learners who are watching this, guys, you have to create or curate your own strategy. You just can go through somebody else's experiences and see what works for you the best. I think that is the takeaway from Anand's journey also. That is what he did. He went through all the toppers notes and all those things. He saw what toppers were doing and then he made his own strategy that worked for him and that worked for him very well. So do not just follow or blindly follow anybody. Have the discretion of choosing your own interest. Your actually it should be individual choice and how you have to strategize exam, your preparation, I would say, and then I think that can fetch you the results that you're looking for. On that note, Anand, thank you so much. It was pleasure talking to you. You came across a very humble, a very nice, perfect engineering lad, I would say. Done with the job, had a job security, wanted to pursue UPSC, IAS, got through that also. So wish you all the luck for the future.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
And may you just do the best, and wish you all the best again. Thank you so much.
Thank you
God
very
bless.
much, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.